Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me is my co-host, Managing Director of International Content, Emily Parker. Hello there, Emily. Lawrence Lewitton is off. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
All right, let's take a quick look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index currently trading below $42,000, now at $41,898. Bitcoin is down almost 4% over the past 24 hours. And the CoinDesk Ether price ETX index right now at $29.06, below that $3,000 threshold. ETH tanking about 5.6%. And the new DFX, CoinDesk's DeFi index, is at 557. DeFi also slipping about 3.9% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. So we're seeing some red candles in the markets today. Emily, is this a delayed reaction from what's going on in China?
I honestly don't really think so. I mean, the reaction to China has been pretty muted, which is probably a bullish sign overall for cryptocurrency. But yeah, I mean, the red that we're seeing here isn't really that out of sync with various, red phases we've seen for reasons that remain unknown. So no, I don't actually think it's a reaction to China.
Yeah, and I love this new white living room background, no longer in the abyss of the blue abyss. All right, another breaking news story that we've been tracking this week is that Ethereum's foundation's Virgil Griffith pled guilty Monday to charges related to his trip to North Korea for a blockchain conference. Author Ethan Liu was on that trip. Ethan wrote an article for CoinDesk, 7 Nights in Pyongyang, inside the North Korean trip that got Ethereum's Virgil Griffith arrested. He's the author of a new book, Once a Bitcoin Miner, Scandal and Turmoil in the Cryptocurrency Wild West. Joining us now from New York is Ethan Liu. Hello there, Ethan. So you've been tracking the trial of Virgil Griffith in Manhattan. What was your reaction to Virgil Griffith's guilty plea yesterday? He could get sentenced up to 6.5 years in prison, I believe.
It was definitely unexpected. I think if you watch how the events unfolded up until a week ago, it seemed as if it was certain that everything was going to go to trial. And for example, a week ago, his lawyers specifically requested not one, but 2 suits for him to wear to court, and in their words, so that he can wear different suits on different days. And I think one thing we don't know is what exactly changed to spark that guilty plea.
Ethan, if I understand correctly, though, I mean, he was warned about taking this trip and then took the trip anyway, unless I have something incorrect. So why was this an unexpected outcome?
Well, ever since he was arrested on Thanksgiving in 2019, he was pleading not guilty. And in fact, he believes so much in his not guilty plea that in one of his appearances, there are only 2 pleas, guilty and not guilty, but he didn't choose any of those. He said he was innocent. And up until the day he pleaded guilty, he had been fighting the charge.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could go back a bit, Ethan. You were on this trip. Tell us a bit about the trip, what you experienced. Was there any, why was Virgil singled out? Were there other Americans who gave a presentation but weren't punished in this way?
Mm-hmm. So I do depict the trip a little in my book. And I think one of the reasons Virgil was singled out is definitely that he was the lone American there. And also, I think he was one of the real crypto big shots who were on that trip. I think that the rest of us, we weren't real blockchain experts like him. And I think he was among those when he went into North Korea. He knew he was going to give a presentation because a lot of the conference, it was not as advertised. It was a bit of a bait and switch. And for most of us, when we went in, we thought we were going to be participants listening to North Korean presenters. And then they told us, no, you are the presentation. And I actually declined to present. But they basically the first day we arrived in Korea, they asked us, "Do you want to present?" But I think for Virgil, when he went in, he knew he was going to be a presenter. And, as laid out in the court documents, he did quite a lot of stuff afterward.
Ethan, you have a very unusual perspective as having actually gone on this trip. So could you tell us a little bit about just what some of the things you saw that surprised you? And you personally, what was your motivation? I mean, what did you think you would get out of going to North Korea for this purpose?
I wanted to go to North Korea precisely because of it had this shady reputation with respect to crypto. We've all read the reports of how North Korea had been accused of all these hacking attempts and how it's been amassing crypto, how it was using that to evade sanctions. And I thought when I went to North Korea for the conference, I was able to see it for myself. I was going to be able to hear from North Koreans, the North Korean crypto people, about what they were doing. But it turns out this was, in China, they have this thing called hire a white person. And basically, you just have a token foreigner on a team to give it prestige. And basically, that was our trip. I'm not a white guy, but most of the people were foreigners. And it was a glorified dog and pony show. And there was nothing of substance actually preached at the conference.
That's really interesting, though, that you went there thinking that you were going to receive a presentation, but then they actually turned the tables on you and asked you to make a presentation. I wonder, there's a lot of uncertainty about what Virgil's presentation was about. Was he educating North Koreans and violating U.S. sanctions laws thereby? What did he exactly say in his presentation? Are you able to disclose that?
Well, Virgil is still due to be sentenced, and the sentence could be anything. So I'm not going to say too much about what he specifically did at the conference, but I can say that what was discussed at the conference in general, it was really surface level thing that you can find with a Google search. And as well, the presentation materials, they were very simple, publicly available research papers. In fact, I tuned out through much of the conference because it was not what I went there for, and it was actually quite boring.
Ethan, did you learn anything about crypto in North Korea, about, just the level of awareness, how it's being used, how it's not being used? That you said that was kind of what you intended to do. Did you get any takeaways on that?
Not at all. And the people, the North Koreans we interacted with, our government minders, they weren't on the tech side. They were people who they were from the cultural side, and their job usually was to chaperone foreign journalists. So, and they were saying, "Oh, we North Korea, we don't know anything about crypto," and it's quite clear that's all a bit of a performance. And so, I think I'm a guy who likes to make the most out of everything. So, the trip wasn't that bad, but I was definitely a little disappointed.
So, Ethan, do you have a sense of what the state of crypto is in North Korea? Do they intend to use Bitcoin or do mining operations as a way of interacting with the global economy?
Well, I don't have a sense any more than what any other person would have when they report. And I think right now, the way North Korea has been accused of using crypto, it's largely to steal it. And that's because, transactions are irreversible. You steal it, you get the money. But to actually use it to breach sanctions on a more transactional level, I think that takes a level of sophistication that I don't think North Korea is up to it yet.
Ethan, just given that you are in such a unique position of actually having visited North Korea, which most Americans do not have the opportunity to do, is there anything you could share with us? Just anything you saw, even amidst the boringness or the dog and pony show, like anything you saw that was surprising or striking or illustrative in any way?
Yeah, well, I have non-crypto insights. I think when the Korean War began in 1950, it wasn't so much a battle between the Koreas. It was a proxy arena for struggles between bigger powers. And I think it's still very much so now. The shadow of China is everywhere. And even a university professor there who teaches English will speak in a bit of a heavy accent. But even service staff there, they speak pitch perfect Chinese. And so the presence of China is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Are you, and now that you're in Manhattan, you're watching the trial happen, do you have a sense of Virgil's state of mind, how and what's next for what will happen in the trial for him?
Well, I don't have any mind reading skills, but I was in court. I saw him, and he sighed audibly at different times, and he did say that he has depression and he was taking medication for it. And something like this, it must weigh very heavily on him. And as for the next steps, he's getting sentenced next year, and so the defense and the prosecution, they've recommended a sentence of between 5 years, 3 months to 6.5 years. But the judge isn't bound by that. It could be lower, could be higher. And I think right now, that's the only uncertainty. And that's probably potentially the only positive thing for him to come out of this is a lower sentence than what's being recommended.
Mm-hmm. And there is a discussion on crypto Twitter on kind of just a lot of anger that why is the U.S. government going after someone who's just giving a Bitcoin or blockchain presentation? And I wonder, I imagine you must have been also reading the same tweets. So how do you weigh in, and what are your thoughts on the whole discussion?
I think to the government, it's very much a national security thing. And it's not so much about what Virgil himself accomplished. And clearly he, evidently, given that he pleaded guilty, he violated the letter of the law. But, the law is always selectively enforced. You have fewer resources than you have laws. So you choose the laws you want to enforce. And I think national security is a big deal. North Korea is becoming a bigger threat. And a chief pillar of justice is always deterrence, to show people the consequences of an act so that they do not attempt it. And I think Virgil, he's definitely a bit of a bit player and caught in much bigger tides.
Would you say he's a scapegoat?
I wouldn't say that. I think a scapegoat means that he didn't actually do it, but he did go to North Korea. But I think he's definitely made an example of.
Great. Ethan, thank you so much. Really interesting discussion, and appreciate you coming on the show. That was Ethan Liu, author of Once a Bitcoin Miner, Scandal and Turmoil in the Cryptocurrency Wild West. Coming up, checking in on Asia and the crypto markets update with IDX Digital Assets. Time now for the daily forecast, an update on what's happening in the Asia crypto markets. Here's Angie Lau of Forecast News.
Welcome to the Daily Forecast, September 28th, 2021. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast News, covering all things blockchain. Well, the fallout from China's crypto ban continues to shake the industry, with reverberations now affecting parts of the crypto mining sector. We're going to take a look at the latest moves and more coming up. Let's get you up to speed from Asia to the world. First up, the impact of Friday's crypto ban announcement by the Chinese government continues to spread, with the focus firmly on the crypto mining sector now. That's right, tech giant Alibaba has announced it will ban sales of crypto mining machines. Meanwhile, despite a clampdown on crypto mining in Inner Mongolia that began in May, authorities have just seized around 10,000 mining rigs from a government-operated tech park. Forecast News' Timmy Shen reports.
Chinese tech giant Alibaba has announced it will ban the sale of cryptocurrency mining equipment from October 8th. The prohibition will apply to both mining hardware and software. In addition, it will also apply to tutorials and strategies on how to obtain virtual currencies. This is on top of the ban it has on the sale of virtual currencies. And mining pool Sparkpool, which was ranked second in terms of Ethereum mining hash rate Tuesday afternoon Asia time, according to data from BTC.com, confirmed via statement on its website that services to new users from mainland China have been suspended. It goes on to say that all services and operations from existing users, both in China and abroad, will be shut down from Thursday evening Asia time. Meanwhile, the clampdown on crypto mining may not have been as effective as the government hoped. The region of Inner Mongolia, which is heavily reliant on coal-powered electricity generation, implemented a ban on crypto mining in May in an attempt to meet national government carbon reduction goals. But according to local media reports, authorities recently discovered and seized 10,100 crypto mining rigs that were being used in an illicit mining operation at the government-operated SME Pioneer Park. One expert told Forecast News that with discussion on carbon neutrality trending on social media in China, implementation of prior policy may not have been working as well as had been hoped.
Still about 50% of the mining happening in China. What do? Going to cut it. And Beijing doesn't like the crypto mining anyway. We have our own ECNY. It's rolling out soon. So I don't see why they are not doing it. The fact that they're just escalating the intensity, just showing that it maybe things were not as good as they all thought. So it's just.
With so many big players making moves to exit the industry, it seems policy may now be tough enough. For Forecast News, I'm Timmy Shan, Taipei, Taiwan.
Meanwhile, Korea's NH Nonghyup Bank is jumping on the crypto custody bandwagon, making it the third major bank in South Korea to enter the crypto custody business after KB Kookmin and Shinhan Bank. Nonghyup is doing just that with a strategic investment in Cardo. The joint venture aims to provide a comprehensive service for cryptocurrencies and also create tokens for other assets like real estate, art, maybe even a warehouse full of your favorite soju. Forecast News' Danny Park reports.
The joint venture started out under the name of Hexland Custody last July, following a memorandum of understanding between NH Nonghyup Bank, blockchain developer Hexland, and law firm BKL. Since changing its name to Cardo this year, the crypto custody service has submitted its business report to be registered under the Financial Intelligence Unit. Now, NH Nonghyup says it has made a strategic equity investment in Cardo. Cardo currently stores and manages Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Clayton, but has bigger plans. They include expanding its horizons into custody of a variety of assets that can be tokenized, such as real estate or works of art, as well as developing a digital asset payment business involving NFTs and stock token offerings. It seems Nonghyup Bank is going all out for crypto, while many others remain wary. We will see if fortune really does favor the bold. For Forecast News, I'm Danny Park.
And that's the daily forecast from our vantage point right here in Asia. For more, visit forecast.news. I'm Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. Until the next time.
The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager. Quick checkup on Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index currently trading at 42,054. Bitcoin is sliding about 3.4% over the past 24 hours, and the CoinDesk Ether price ETX index now at 29.19. ETH also taking a step back over 5%. And the new DFX CoinDesk's DeFi index is trading at 556. DeFi is down over 4%. All right, and joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Ben McMillan, Chief Investment Officer at IDX Digital Assets, which has developed a suite of risk-managed digital currency indices. Welcome, Ben. And so, from what I understand, IDX has recently has sold fully out of Bitcoin exposure before the recent price volatility, finding worrying fundamentals. Tell me a bit about that.
Yep. Well, it's good to see you, Christine. I mean, what's interesting too is if we kind of zoom out, 2021 has really been the year of China and regulatory actions. And what's interesting is China's starting to ban Bitcoin several times over the years. In fact, they have a saying over there: "Much thunder, little rain," when it comes to these threats. But this time they meant it. And that's been the culprit behind most of the downside volatility this year. We saw it back in May when China banned mining operations. There was nearly $1 trillion of market cap was wiped out in a matter of hours. Fortunately, at that point, our models had been in cash for a couple of weeks. But, our alerts started flashing red when this was happening. We saw it again last weekend when there was over $1 billion of Bitcoin liquidations across various Chinese exchanges, which interestingly was almost certainly in anticipation of China's official declaration that Bitcoin transactions would become illegal. And at that point, again, we were in cash. And generally what we're looking for, and we've always been telling clients that, we get the question constantly, as Bitcoin matures as an asset class, do we think that volatility is going to go down? And we've always said the answer is no. There's just the threat of China in particular, regulatory actions in general, coupled with just the highly speculative nature of the asset class, it does not lend itself to a decreasing volatility regime. And so that's one of the things we focus on and that's why we launched these suite of risk managed products, ultimately to allow it to become more consumable and more accessible for institutions.
I find it really interesting that you fully pulled out of Bitcoin. I wonder, what price did you sell it at?
Yep. So if we go back to, like I said, really there's two big vol events. So back in April, around middle of April, our models went to cash at around 55,000. And I'll preface this by saying all of our models are indexed. They're calculated by S&P, so people can go to our website. They can go to S&P's website. They can pull down these indices themselves, track them real time daily. But back in April, our risk managed Bitcoin index went to cash at around 55,000, which was a couple of weeks before the big May sell-off that saw Bitcoin retest 30,000, which was a 50% drawdown. And then again, we went flat again last weekend, right around 48,000, again before Bitcoin retested 40,000. So avoiding a 20% drawdown.
Hi, Ben. So a couple of questions about this. So I actually have a slightly different take on kind of the China disruption. You're right that China does tend to cause Bitcoin to fall, but it's been recovering pretty quickly. And, the trajectory has generally been upward. In fact, we've seen compared to times past, the hit that Bitcoin had with the China news was actually relatively small and it recovered pretty quickly. So I actually have kind of an opposite interpretation. It seems that Bitcoin is becoming more resilient to China shocks. So I'm just curious, what you think about that. And then also in terms of volatility, again, if you look over the long term, Bitcoin is still kind of moving in an upward direction.
Well, I don't disagree at all that Bitcoin is becoming more resilient to the China shocks, and that's a good thing for the Bitcoin community, particularly the banning of miners back in May. Again, we saw an immediate sell-off after that, and then it trended downwards, but ultimately, Bitcoin did come back a little bit. Fortunately, allowed us to get long for a little bit of that uptick, and importantly, that moved a lot of the concentration away from China. One of the big issues among kind of practitioners and developers has always been the fact that so much of the mining concentration was in mainland China, which represented this theoretical risk vector that now has been kind of muted. Same thing with forcing Bitcoin transactions to be illegal. China's always had a very disproportionate impact on Bitcoin. So ultimately, this is good in terms of, and I agree with you, Bitcoin has kind of shown its resilience as a decentralized network against these China impacts, and we would expect them to continue to mute over time.
So what would you need to see in Bitcoin and crypto that would make you comfortable to get back in and buy again?
So generally at these levels, we're looking at a number of things. One of the key things here is kind of how long does it, what does it retest at, and how long does it spend at that support level? So what does the support level ultimately end up being? And that's just a function of market participants, supply and demand, kind of battling it out to see where we end up. We're also looking at a lot of on-chain metrics. One of the things we're very interested in as quantitative, ultimately hedge fund managers, is all the transparency we can get from a decentralized blockchain. So we're looking at things like active addresses, which have come down a little bit on Bitcoin. Transactions have come down a little bit on Bitcoin. Part of that is the efficiency of the Lightning Network. But again, typically we would expect that to increase a little bit as participants, dry powder coming in off the sidelines to provide a bid. So we're still looking for we would need, for us to go back long, we would be looking for kind of sustained strength, both fundamentally and from a price perspective, in terms of Bitcoin buyers kind of returning back to the market en masse.
Just one quick question, finally. So if you're getting out of Bitcoin, are there other cryptocurrencies that you feel better about or that you feel more confident about investing in?
So that's an excellent question. And so we have models for Bitcoin, we have models for Ethereum, we have models for DeFi. And so we want to provide a suite of risk managed options for clients. We're sort of agnostic as to which one. We have folks that are 100% focused on Bitcoin. A lot of our more institutional investors are starting to migrate directly into Ethereum or DeFi. The value prop for DeFi is interesting, and we saw actually on the back of this latest China ban on crypto, the DeFi exchanges really won the day. If you look at DXDY flipped Coinbase in terms of daily volume for the first time ever, and so. You're seeing the value prop of DeFi play out real time, like you did back in May, when a lot of the centralized exchanges went down, the morning of the China sell-off, but the DeFi exchanges were still up and running. And so that we're seeing a lot of institutional interest in Ethereum and DeFi. But yeah, in terms of other coins, the asset class in general is an exciting space. We just want to provide kind of the best exposure.
And just from your notes, I see that you're seeing a strong opportunity for investors to access commodities. Cash is looking more attractive during times of volatility. Industrial metals also, you see a benefit there with global manufacturing coming back online. So thank you very much for joining us, Ben. Appreciate your insights. We got to end it there, but thanks for coming on the show. That was IDX Digital Assets CIO Ben McMillan. Coming up, the latest out of Washington with Anderson Kill attorney Hailey Lennon and Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day. Welcome back. Time to check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who's also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Hello there, Nick. So a dozen far-right entities took in Bitcoin worth more than $9 million just over 4 years, according to the Associated Press. And that money is all but out of reach to banks, courts, as well as regulators. And you wrote about far-right extremists using Bitcoin before, so this is not new.
Good morning. Yes, we've seen government agencies and private entities like Chainalysis report that far-right extremists are turning to cryptocurrency after they've been deplatformed from more traditional fintech payment firms like PayPal. And so from one point of view, this is really kind of the Bitcoin use case as originally envisioned, being put into active daily use. On the other hand, it also kind of shows that when we say Bitcoin or whatever might be out of reach of governments and legal judgments, that goes to show that even when there are parties that might have actual legal claims against some of these individuals, they might not be able to take in their funds. And from the Associated Press article, one of the details that really stood out to me was a lot of the cryptocurrencies that have been tracked so far were in Bitcoin, but now some of these individuals are calling on their followers to donate using, Monero or other privacy coins. And so, Bitcoin obviously is still trackable on the blockchain. Everyone can look at the transactions and look at the addresses and stuff. But clearly that might not be enough for some of these folks trying to fundraise using crypto.
Mm-hmm. So does this marriage between crypto as well as politics in the United States mean that it'll be further difficult to regulate or, limit cryptocurrencies in the country?
I think it's definitely something that lawmakers are paying very close attention to. So, back in January, during the attempted insurrection at the Capitol, you saw that, lawmakers asked questions about crypto that was sent to some of the individuals who were either present at the Capitol or, who were affiliated with the activities on in Capitol Hill that day. And there was a whole, we had lawmakers writing letters, and you had agencies investigating whether or not Bitcoin was used to fund some of those, activities that were likened to, attempted domestic terrorism. And I can't imagine that this is going to, lower the temperature on that conversation any bit. I imagine you're gonna see lawmakers continuing to ask questions and, asking whether or not they need to find either, more stringent AML KYC laws or some other form of, tamping down on this to prevent, what they might see as a national security risk.
Nick, of course, we have to ask, what is the latest on the infrastructure bill? Where are we with that?
Yeah, so there was a vote originally scheduled for yesterday that did not happen. What we're seeing out of Capitol Hill right now is originally the infrastructure bill was supposed to be voted on in tandem or very close to the $3.5 trillion bill that is purely a Democratic effort. But because the $3.5 trillion bill isn't ready yet, we're not seeing any votes at this time. And yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi suggested, or raised the idea that the votes might be separated. There might be two different votes, but it remains to be seen whether there are enough Democrats in the House to vote for the bipartisan bill to make that happen.
All right, well, Nick, thanks for continuing to monitor the infrastructure bill and all things happening in Washington for us. All right, that was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com.
The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
House lawmakers are weighing that $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California has signaled will move ahead on a vote this week, possibly Thursday now, despite divisions over broader social safety net measures. And joining us now is Hailey Lennon, partner at Anderson Kill in California. Hello, Hailey. So there are a number of crypto provisions in this bill. Perhaps you could outline how this infrastructure bill will impact the blockchain industry.
Sure, happy to. We've been talking about the infrastructure bill in terms of a variety of things.
Oh, I believe, Hailey, you are frozen. We'll hope to get you back. But nevertheless, we're seeing that the infrastructure is being discussed. It has, of course, that crypto mining provision that, or rather people were concerned that crypto miners would be subject to broker rules, expanded broker rules that could impact how rewards are among miners. And Emily, anything you're curious about and what DC looks at going forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm curious, like, what's going to happen, because now, as you said, there's a lot of very highly contested language in the infrastructure bill, and the crypto industry has been saying that this would be absolutely disastrous. But it doesn't look like, as of now, that language is going to change. So we're sort of stuck with this quote unquote disastrous language. And so I guess I'm curious to see if it's really going to bring disaster, as some people are warning, or if, we'll figure out a way around it.
Another thing that everyone is looking at is Gary Gensler. He's set to set out a report on stablecoins as well as potentially DeFi later on in the fall. And with that could come from the Biden administration more potential proposals or regulations surrounding stablecoins. That's certainly a market that they feel will hamper financial stability in the markets right now. So also something to be watching out for. And if we have Hailey Lennon back, do we, folks? We do not. All right. So, but one subject that we also wanted to mention was women in crypto. And I wonder, Emily, as a woman in crypto, you might have some insights onto that.
I mean, how much time do you have? No, just kidding. It's obviously a very interesting topic. I'm hoping we can get Hailey back to hear her perspective on it, because women are known to be relatively underrepresented in crypto, and the question is like, how unique is that to the crypto industry specifically, or is this just sort of like a wider trend that affects tech and finance?
Well, just from our conversation, I mean, we were discussing previously off camera that finance itself and the tech industry has a bro subculture, and uniting them in crypto, which is both finance and fintech, brings another level of that to that kind of double whammy that women have to face in crypto. So from what I understand, Hailey is back, and she is also, we'll discuss this, but Hailey, the first question that I asked you was about the infrastructure bill and how that will impact the blockchain industry. I was hoping you could offer some insights.
Sure. Sorry about that. Internet issues. Hopefully we'll be good moving forward. So yeah, in terms of the infrastructure bill, it's been something I've been following closely. I think we need to see where it goes, but the issue there is really that the infrastructure bill currently would track and force companies to record transactions that they may otherwise struggle to comply with in terms of actually having the technical infrastructure to track and report on those different recording transaction requirements. So I think that we made a lot of progress. So there was a lot of movement on the Hill and within the different amendments. So I'm feeling cautiously optimistic, but we, need to see sort of where that goes and what it actually does for the industry.
I'm also hearing from other crypto provisions and proposals that lawmakers are coming up. I wonder if you've heard of any that pop into mind that may raise some concern or challenges going forward.
Well, some of them were so broadly drafted that they would encompass more of the sort of mining and DeFi areas that traditionally have not been able to or have struggled to comply with recording standards because they aren't obtaining that information to begin with. So, and they aren't technically able to at this point. So I think that those are the amendments that people are concerned about. But we did see some flexibility in some other amendments and also sort of discussions on clarifying legislative intent regardless of what language goes forward. So I think we're in a good position for that to not overly negatively impact the industry.
Hailey, just a larger kind of narrative question here. In terms of what's happening in the U.S., is this just kind of the U.S. just trying to figure out how to regulate this like really quickly developing space, or are these signs of like a U.S. regulatory crackdown? Because you kind of have like people sort of arguing both sides. What is your take? I mean, is this something people should be really worried about, or is this just part of the normal process?
So I am maybe less concerned about the infrastructure bill, but there are some things happening, especially with the SEC, that worry me in terms of potentially us seeing more enforcement actions moving forward. I think that Gary Gensler has made some statements just in terms of centralized and decentralized exchanges being on their radar more, and this idea that there are tokens on these exchanges that may be securities. And so I think we just need to sort of continue seeing how the SEC regulates the space, but up until now, it's really been regulation through enforcement and threat of litigation, and I think that leaves the companies and the attorneys like myself in the space in a difficult position.
Hailey, we got to wrap up, but want to ask you about Crypto Connect. Apparently, it's a women's association in the blockchain industry. Tell me a bit about why you felt a need to create this group.
Yeah, so the need really came from my personal experience. I joined Anderson Kill as a partner during COVID, and I found it much more difficult to know where companies were based, where people lived. And so Crypto Connect, the idea of it is it's a decentralized organization where there will be city leads we launched in 12 different cities, but hope to expand in many more cities and internationally by next year. And the idea is that it would be an automatic resource for individuals who are looking for their sense of community in the crypto space, whether they're traveling for work, relocating somewhere, or just somewhere for business for a quick trip. I found that I was having to utilize sort of my personal network and even Twitter presence to ping into those communities when I would travel. And so brought together some of the amazing leaders in the space that I had found to also be like me, really liking to create connections in the space. And so we've launched Crypto Connect to be a resource for everyone in the industry in that way.
Hailey, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there is a special emphasis on kind of women and providing a network for women. And I was just wondering if you could address your personal opinion about what are some pain points or frustrations for women specifically in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, so the initiative is women-led. There are 26 board members, all women. And I just think that allows women who are interested in getting into the industry to see that representation in leadership roles. And I think that's important and should be more common. But we were very careful in when we decided to launch this initiative and how we posed it to the industry, that it really is open for everyone and a resource for everybody. The members of Crypto Connect view cryptocurrency for everybody, and as a result, this resource should be for everyone. And so I think there's an argument that there are more men in the industry, there are more men investing in crypto, but at the end of the day, we don't want gender to really be the topic. We want it to be I think that men have been very helpful in my career. And so as a result, I think an initiative like this requires everyone to still be included in part of the conversation and part of the networking and mentorship opportunities.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Gender shouldn't be the topic, but should definitely be at the table as a participant. All right. Thank you, Hailey, very much for joining us. Congratulations on your new initiative. That was Anderson Kill partner Hailey Lennon. Time now to check in with Crypto Twitter with our tweet of the day. This one from Blake Masters, COO of Teal Capital and also running for U.S. Senate in Arizona, tweeting, China banned cryptocurrency last week. Let's do the opposite. The U.S. government should buy a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Fort Nakamoto, the new Fort Knox. Related, my U.S. Senate campaign now accepts a BTC donations. DM me or write. So crypto is certainly getting political. That's it for First Mover. Thank you, Emily Parker. I'm your host, Christine Lee. I'll be back live at 3 p.m. with all about Bitcoin. Coming up at noon is The Hash. You're watching CoinDesk TV.